right, well, welcome to Diner Days. This is an opportunity for me to speak to all the citizens in the state of Louisiana. We're going to do this podcast. Why? Because we want to cut through all of the clutter and noise and half-truths and misinformation that's out there and bring you the most up-to-date information about what's going on in Baton Rouge and the great things that we're doing around the state. And my guest today is going to be Keith Hinkley, who's the parish president of Plaquemines. And why? It's because I get a bunch of emails, from citizens all over the state, Keith, and they ask us different issues or questions about what's going on. And so I had received an email from Kathleen in Plaquemines Parish, and her email said that she had received a letter indicating that permits are being sought for the Mid-Barataria sound diversion on the East Bank, and that she's real concerned about this particular project. She wanted to know, are we supporting the project, or do we want to stop the project? And I thought I'd pick it out in the list of emails. Oh, and by the way, we're at the Waffle House. I got Keith over here sitting at the Waffle House with us. We got our great waitress, Miracle, who's going to serve us today.
How we doing today, y'all?
We are doing absolutely great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, my baby.
Thank you so much. And so Keith, why don't we talk about the diversion project? Why it's been a problem? Why, when I became governor, this was a project that was hastily done. The contract was let before the election occurred, and what people in Plaquemines Parish's concerns are about the project.
Well, what we're concerned about a lot. It goes back from the base flood elevations that they never did do the right mapping on that from the NFIP. FEMA we were looking for those maps, and they could never produce them for us. They never did do the modeling on that. They were not only supposed to do the modeling for Plaquemines Parish, but for 7 other parishes surrounding that basin. They never did do it, and to this day they haven't done it. And there have been permit after permit that they failed to do throughout this whole process, where if they would have done the permitting properly, we wouldn't have been able to stop it. But prior to you getting into office, and I think it was August of 23, and they put shovels in the ground. They destroyed the area there, all the old oak trees, but they were hastily doing it. They were only 90% complete in the design of this. So how can you build something that's only 90% ready?
Well, one of the interesting things is I remember you talking to me right after we got in, and there were a couple of issues that y'all had, which is one of the reasons that y'all did file suit. That's the other thing that's going on in this project, is that there are a number of legal challenges to this particular project. But if you walk back to when the project first started, the project was supposed to cost us $750 million, and today it's $3 billion. And of course, from the lawsuits that y'all initiated, it made us do a more extensive review of the engineering study of this particular project. And what we found was that there were actually engineering models that were actually hidden from both the public, from you and the Corps on this permit. And that those engineering reports basically said that not only was it problematic in Plaquemines, that it wasn't going to build the amount of land that they claimed it would, that even when they built it, it was going to subside, or that land was going to sink that fast. In addition to it, one of the big problems that y'all are facing or have been facing, if you want to talk about that for just a second, I think it's important, is this saltwater wedge that continues to move up the Mississippi River and impact y'all drinking water.
Right. Well, and it's because of all of these trenasses and all of the openings going down the river. We're basically probably close to the Port Sulphur, Beers, Empire area. We're becoming tidal because we're losing about 50% of the river's flow out into the marsh. And that's what's allowing that saltwater wedge to be coming up further and further on an annual basis.
And that as that saltwater wedge, for those people that don't understand, because I got some folks from North Louisiana that might be listening in and they might not understand, but basically what happens is your primary source of drinking water for the parish of Plaquemines and also for Orleans and for many parts of Jefferson Parish come from the Mississippi River, correct?
Yes, it is.
And that water from the Mississippi River, in order to provide drinking water to your citizens and the citizens in New Orleans and in Jefferson Parish, that water has to be fresh water. It can't be salt water.
Correct.
It can't have a lot of salinity in that water. Is that correct?
True, because what we've been having to do for the last 2 to 3 years, we've having to secure reverse osmosis machines. Plus, we also have to do microfiltration systems because of the contaminants in the river. We have to treat that water first and then go through the salinity removal. So think about those contaminants that we have to pull out of the river, out of that water before we can create drinking water. They're wanting to put that same river water out into our estuary where you've got your shrimp and your oysters. You got residents. We have our indigenous people in Grand Bayou. They're wanting to do that river through that area.
Well, that's another good point. Is that 30% of the shrimp that are caught in Louisiana, okay, 30% of the Louisiana shrimp catch is harvested in Plaquemines Parish and in Barataria Bay.
True.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then I think, if I'm not mistaken, 30% of the oysters that are harvested in Louisiana come out of Barataria Bay, that area as well.
Yes, it does.
Tell us what this project, if it was allowed to be completed, if we had the $3 billion to spend on it,
$3 billion.
$3 billion, what would it do to the oysters and the shrimp?
It'll destroy it. It's my understanding we've got Mardi Gras Pass on the East Bank. That's not a natural pass. That was a man-made structure. It has failed, and it's allowing the river to go into the East Bank side of Plaquemines Parish. It's my understanding those were state waters. Some of the best oysters in the state of Louisiana, probably in the country, came from that area. And now because of this salt water, there's 0 oysters coming from the East Bank side of Plaquemines Parish. So what you're telling me, if we were to go through with this project, what's happened on the East Bank side of Plaquemines Parish would happen on the West Bank side of Plaquemines Parish. Destroy it.
And of course, it's important for everyone out there to know that you're not against coastal restoration.
No,
you want coastal protection just like I do,
Absolutely.
but you want to do it in a very controlled
Exactly.
and scientific way. One that doesn't harm the environment, one
Right.
that doesn't affect the culture of the area.
Right. You can go back to probably like my first interviews and my first statements at CPRA. I said, look, we're not against diversions, but we have to do it smarter.
Correct.
This is not smart at 75,000. You know, it goes back to, I think, 1990 and 2011. The Corps did come up with a project that shows somewhere between 2,200 to 15,000. That flow, where you can also control the salinities. You can do your crim stations out there where you can control the level of the salinity. You can also control the level of the estuary or the basin. You know, we don't want to raise this basin up 4 feet. This 75,000, it's devastating.
Well, and of course, one of the things that we haven't talked about, and I think we can kind of finish it up with that, is that not only will the project cost $3 billion upfront to put in place, not only will it, in its current state, destroy the shrimping and the oysters, impact the cultural identity of Plaquemines Parish, raise the flood dangers of the citizens in Plaquemines Parish. Not only will it have an impact on their particular drinking water, but one of the interesting parts about it is that we could do this project in a way that it's controlled, that you can build land mass before, that instead of basically shocking the marsh,
Right.
you can do it in a way where we start to let fresh water in while building the marsh. Is that not correct?
That's true. You know, in the state's plan, there's land bridges that we have proposed. There's one that goes from Port Sulphur down to the tip of the South Lafitte. You create that. That's like 16,000 acres of land that can be dredged. Now, if you got the small diversion, it will supplement. It will add to it, and it would just keep building it that way.
And the larger diversion, let's talk about the legacy costs. Let's talk about would the taxpayer right now, after we spend the $3 billion, based upon the current design, which is one of the things that the omitted report, the report that was hidden from the Corps and from the public said, is that you will have some what they call legacy costs, meaning like maintenance costs. And that maintenance cost would cause the state to have to pay for a tremendous amount of dredging and keeping the channel open to the tune of tens of millions,
Oh,
50
yeah,
million.
I've heard 50 million at one point, because there's still wellheads out. There's bayous that need to be opened. It's maintenance. And where does that money come from?
Wouldn't you rather that $50 million spent on some roads?
No, absolutely. And look, I'm going to tell you what, in Plaquemines, you know what we need in Plaquemines Parish?
A bridge.
The bridge, right.
I know. Well,
absolutely.
look, you are no different than a lot of the citizens from around the state and a lot of parish presidents and police jurors who know that we need to really focus on our infrastructure, whether it is our drinking water, whether it's sewer, whether it's roads and bridges. And so to be able to have a project that would basically drain the coastal protection fund that we have to do all of the other projects we have along the coast, in addition to costing the state and our taxpayers tens of millions, up to maybe $50 million or
Right.
more in legacy costs, that's unfair.
Right.
And but y'all aren't saying, no, we should not do this project. Y'all are just saying we should relook at the
Yeah,
project.
absolutely, absolutely. We're not against coastal restoration, not against the diversion. There's just smarter ways to do it.
Well, so for Kathleen, if you're out there and you get a chance to listen to this podcast, what you're hearing from the parish president and from the governor and from those that work with us is that we are committed to coastal protection. We are not against diversions, but there's a smart way to do it. And we want to make sure that it's done in a transparent manner and that the amount of money that we spend is controlled, that we do it in a fiscally responsible manner. Wouldn't you say
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
that? Well, Keith, I couldn't tell you how much I appreciate you giving us an opportunity to join us on
appreciate it.
Diner Days. And thanks for helping me answer some of our citizens' questions. And this is a very, very important topic. And so we do appreciate you visiting with us today. And we look forward to answering some more questions. I'm sure we'll get some more questions on the diversion on the Mid-Barataria project as we move forward. The Corps right now has paused the permit. You
Right.
didn't pause it. I didn't pause it. The Corps paused it
Corps,
and said,
right.
hey, y'all didn't give us everything.
Look, when the Corps did it, it didn't come from New Orleans. It came from D.C., I'm sure.
Right.
Some
Well,
pretty
they said-
high-level individuals are looking at it.
They said, hey, y'all didn't give us all the information. We want to
Exactly.
look it up.
Right.
Well, we do appreciate it, and thank you for your time.
All right, Governor, thank
All right,
you.
thank you. All right, this is Governor Jeff Landry back for Diner Days. This is our great podcast that we're doing from the Waffle House, one of my most favorite places to eat breakfast. And joining me today is my great friend, Madison Sheahan. Did I say it right, man?
You did.
After all, I've been knowing you for like years now, and I butcher it. That's just how I do. But I tell you what, the great thing is we're going to give Madison an opportunity to tell the folks from Louisiana a little bit about her. She spent the last almost year as our Secretary of Wildlife and Fisheries. She was the youngest Wildlife and Fisheries Secretary in the state of Louisiana to run that department. And my, what a mess it was when she took it over. It is doing phenomenal now. So it's great to have you. We'll talk about why you're not here anymore a little later. So tell Louisiana a little bit about yourself. I know you've gone around the state a bunch.
Yeah, well, Governor, thanks for having me today. It's exciting to be back in Louisiana. I recently left as your Secretary of Wildlife and Fisheries to be the Deputy Director of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement.
Working for President Trump,
Working directly for President Trump and
And?
Secretary Kristi Noem,
my great friend.
who is obviously a good friend of yours.
Which
and
is how we
mine,
met.
Which is how we met when you were Attorney General. So it's nice to be back here in Louisiana with you and be able to talk about what we're doing at DHS, but also kind of where we came from working at the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. And I think we met probably 5 years ago when you were Attorney General working for Governor Noem at the time. We worked on some different projects together then, whether...
Well, Kristi and I knew each other from Congress, right? So that's how her and I developed a relationship. You were doing such a great job for her up there. When I became governor, I said, we got to steal you.
And we had a lot of fun going for secretary for a year and a half or so in your administration, being able to kick it off from the start, build teams together. And I think we had a lot of success in Louisiana right away.
Well, I think I will never forget one of the components and one of the things that I thought was just remarkable about your resume was the fact that you were a college athlete. I mean, You went to Ohio State. It'd have been better if you had LSU or one of them, but it's okay. You know, you and JD Vance, Ohio,
right.
so we'll forgive you on that. But I think that being a college athlete and then working in leadership roles, and then of course getting an opportunity to work for Governor Nome, gave you an opportunity to see government from the inside and the out. But it was your leadership qualities that, to me, was the perfect fit for going into the wildlife, into our Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries Agency and trying to shake things up. And I remember when you first got there, I remember folks coming to me and saying, "What are you doing? How can someone young run the agency?" There was a lot of skepticism for both me and you. That's okay. They like, I get that all the time. But I remember that after, the first couple of weeks or 4 or 5 weeks, I don't remember how long it was, you invited me to go and actually speak to the enforcement division, which was like 200 enforcement agents?
Roughly 250 or so agents.
And at the time, you told me that no governor had ever addressed all of the wildlife agents at one time in the building. Was that right?
That's true. Still is true.
And how often did you find that the secretary would address it?
Well, we found out that it was probably one of the first times that the secretary even came in and addressed them. Miss Sheahan came as well. So you had the governor, the first lady, and the secretary of the department addressing them. It was one of the first times that we did a statewide law enforcement meeting. Normally the colonel would go out and meet with region by region. And then I think what you see happen is each region kind of develops their own kingdom. And one of the things that you wanted to do when we came in was to kind of cut down those walls, make them all start working together with all of the other local partners, whether it was state police or the sheriffs, and really maximize our effort and our footprint as a wildlife and fisheries agency. And I think when you came in that day, you said you were going to take care of the agents, we were going to put them first. And really had historic success. You were able to deliver the first pay raise in over 14 years to the agency, and really probably one of the largest pay raises in state history. And from a
Well, they deserved it.
Exactly.
I mean, they do a very dangerous job, and they're a very key component. That we actually, you ended up having a great team around you. Stephen Clark now is the colonel of the department, and of course through your leadership and his, we were able to bring wildlife and fishery agents to New Orleans to combat crime in New Orleans when we needed a force multiplier. But tell us about what y'all found on Bourbon Street when we first got in.
Well, when we first got in, the governor gave us the directive that if it wasn't a cat or a dog on a leash, it doesn't belong on Bourbon Street. And in the state of Louisiana, you're not subject to ownership of wildlife. And so we took that seriously. And so we went down on Bourbon, and one of the first nights of Mardi Gras 2024, we were able to take off of the street a possum that caused a uproar, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners remember when we went in and took it. But at the end of the day, it was about keeping Bourbon Street safe, but also getting a lot of the crime that was on Bourbon, which just happens to be a nexus to some of these wildlife issues that you were seeing on Bourbon Street on the daily basis, as well as a 14-foot
Yes, that's my favorite.
constrictor. We took off. It was
14 feet.
14-foot python constrictor off.
That was
of
on Bourbon Street.
Yes, it was on Bourbon. People were taking photos with it, and then what was happening is you saw a lot of pickpocketers and other things around the same area that this wildlife was always at.
So y'all were able to work with Troop NOLA in helping to bring the crime on Bourbon Street and the surrounding areas down. In fact, y'all were also part of the contingency force that helped us in the aftermath of the terrorist attack.
Yes,
That's
yes.
correct.
We had a group of agents working on Bourbon Street. So one of the things we did when I came into the department is we went and created the Special Operations Group, which was a unit that could go down on Bourbon. They were specialized trained, similar to the mobile field force units within state police, give them the proper training that they need, and then they can go down on Bourbon and work in that more close quarters than they're used to in standard conservation work. That team was actually on the ground on January 1st. We had 10 agents on the ground, and then afterwards our MSRT team, equivalent to a SWAT team, as well as our other units and regional agents, were able to respond immediately. And because we already had those relationships in NOLA with state police and the local law enforcement, we were able to help maximize, and there wasn't a hitch in the operations. The operational plan was able to go smoothly because we already had those relationships and had worked with them for so long after creating that division.
Well, and not only did you work, I don't want people to think that the Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries Department is just enforcement agents. You got biologists, You've got a lot of other personnel there as well, but you work closely with our biologists at the Louisiana Wildlife Department to open up a black bear season.
We did. We had a first ever black bear season and actually shot what we believe to be the Boone and Crockett record of the largest black bear killed in North America. It was over 700 pounds.
Which was taken by a veteran.
It was taken by a veteran.
A disabled veteran.
A disabled veteran,
It's
Purple
awesome.
Heart
It's just so
recipient.
awesome.
Which was a huge accomplishment for the department and recognized by Safari Club International and a lot of other the big partners, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, to be able to put this on. Louisiana has a long history of success that I had the opportunity to be a part of, but predates me, predates you of these animals being able to, in the different species, get off of the endangered species list. They did it with the American alligator, which you probably were a part of to an extent as a young boy, killing things in the woods. But so the history of the American alligator, being able to bring it to a hunting season, and now is flourishing population, but also with the black bear. And most states never have the opportunity to get one species off the endangered list, let alone two.
Right.
Historic success with the bald eagles and different bird species. And really what you've seen is a department that is really kind of on the cutting edge of conservation, and not only conservation law enforcement, but conservation from a biology standpoint, because I think what people miss all the time is that our job at the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries was to manage species so that way you could have a hunting season. It was to prioritize the sportsmen of Louisiana, and that's what we did every single day. That was our goal. Being able to bring the black bear season was just fulfilling that goal of bringing more opportunity to the sportsmen of Louisiana.
Well, I don't think people from Louisiana take the time. I mean, we just don't. I mean, until the black bear harvest, I hadn't even taken a step back to say, wow, look what we've actually done in Louisiana. We now have 2 species that were on the endangered species list that we were able to actively on our own take and delist them. That is a huge accomplishment. I think it speaks volumes for the way that we treat our wildlife here in Louisiana. We're known as Sportsman's Paradise, and we appreciate your leadership there. Of course, now we can pivot because you left us.
I left you.
You left us to go and work back for Governor Nome, who's now Secretary Nome at the Department of Homeland Security. She was appointed by President Trump. She's doing a phenomenal job. I think today marks her first
100 days in office. So
right?
Obviously we have President Trump's 100 days last week. Secretary Nome's 100 days is marked as today, getting through a confirmation hearing and really hitting the ground with a lot of success. Being able to secure the border to almost 99.99%, if not higher than that now, working with a full government approach to be able to make sure that CBP and the other border contingencies have the resources they need. And then our job is the enforcement of the interior. And so we're working every day in the interior to make sure that the laws that are on the books and that President Trump has set this mandate, that we are able to go in and get the worst of the worst out of our communities to keep the American people safe. And Secretary Nome has had historic numbers really in the first couple weeks here of this administration, first 100 days, to be able to have success. But a lot of that comes from the partnerships that we've built at the state level. We've had huge success in the state of Florida. Over the first 100 days, we've obviously been working on some projects here in Louisiana under the governor's direction here, and it's really just been a historic 100 days.
And I think it's important not only for folks from Louisiana that are watching, but folks from around the country that might, tune into our podcast, is that basically the instructions and the mission that y'all have is to go out and to find people that have entered into this country illegally and that are committing crimes in this country because they're wreaking havoc on different communities, and make sure that we remove them from the country.
Exactly. And I would say that most of the people that we're removing from this country are not people you want to run into in a dark alley. These are people with lists of crimes that most people wouldn't dream of, that we're facing every day, and that the men and women of ICE are going in and combating. And
it's fair to say that those people are wreaking a lot of havoc and violence and basically inflicting a lot of pain on communities, irrespective of if there are people that are in the country undocumented or not. I mean, it doesn't matter. Their criminal activity is affecting everyone in the country. And y'all job is to try to take those people not only off the street, but out of the country, because we don't want people to come into this country and break our laws.
Exactly. And, if you're an American citizen, you're bound by the laws on the books, right? You're considered a criminal if you conduct criminal activity, and yet somehow there's some different standard for the illegal aliens who are in this country, and President Trump has just made the mandate that it's not. That if you're a criminal in this country and you are illegal, that you should be removed from this country. Prime example of this is the 500,000 children that the Biden administration allowed to come unaccompanied across the border, that Secretary Noem and President Trump has made a priority to go find these children, get them out of human trafficking rings, and either get them into a safe location with Health and Human Services, or make sure that they're reunited with their families.
Yeah, because a lot of times the news says, oh, like these kids some of those kids may have been kidnapped, some of those kids may have left. We don't know what happened, which would force that child to go from their country of origin into the United States illegally. And so really, that's a compassionate way of looking at it, making sure that those kids are not being abused, sex trafficked, or engaging or using those children to engage in further criminal activity. So again, the focus is on those that are breaking our laws here in the country, correct?
Exactly. The focus is on the criminals that are in this country illegally, that are contributing to these huge crime networks, that are contributing to human trafficking, drug smuggling, and even the violent gangs that you're seeing day to day in a lot of our larger communities. And usually in your more Democrat-run cities is I think where you're seeing the biggest contingency of whether it's TDA, MS-13, 18th Street Gang. These members of these communities are just wreaking havoc on the day-to-day life of the American people. And, as a parent, you're never going to want your kid to go out into the community if that's where these people are at, just for their own safety. And Americans should be safe in their own home. And so being able to get these people out of the communities promotes the American people and the safety of them.
Well, how do we talk about a couple of those high-profile cases? How about we talk about Alberto Kilmore?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the media is out there making the guy look like he's some sort of saint when he's got a rap sheet probably longer than this building, and a very extensive criminal history. You want to?
Yeah, well, not only at this point, we've seen body cam footage of this guy interacting with Tennessee troopers conducting illegal activity. We have records, multiple domestic violence records that his wife has filed, and as well as 2 different courts confirmed that he was an MS-13 gang member. And at the end of the day, if the Democrats want to tout that this is their hero and continue to go down that path, they're just telling the American people they don't care about their safety. They don't care about their own communities that they represent. And I think that's the biggest difference between President Trump and President Biden.
Yeah, I think that basically y'all, the orders that y'all have from the White House and your mission is to keep America safe, right? And to do everything you can to make sure that people are safe in their communities, irrespective of where they live.
Exactly.
And that we shouldn't have people that come into this country illegally and then break our criminal laws, and we should not tolerate that. And of course, I know we're going to wrap this up, but we're going to be working closely over the next 30 days or so. We should have some good information for the general public out there on some of the things that we're doing together, the way that we're going to work with ICE and some of the Homeland Security agencies out there to make our streets safer here in Louisiana as well, right?
Exactly. And Governor, at the end of the day, Homeland Security is border security and vice versa. And we want to make sure those things stay at a priority. And no matter what state you're in, every state is a border state. Most governors are facing similar battles or the same battle, whether it's drugs, trafficking, or some of the other heinous crimes that we deal with on a daily basis, violent gangs, and being able to work side by side with you. I'm very excited for the future that we're going to progress with ICE to make sure that we're working integrated with your state law enforcement, your local law enforcement, because at the end of the day, there's nobody that cares more about the state of Louisiana than you do, and the people of Louisiana. And then President Trump cares more about America than everybody else, right? So we want to make sure that you know your state better than anybody else. You care about Louisiana more than anybody else. We want to make sure that you have the tools and resources you need as a governor.
Well, we appreciate that. And I know a lot of law enforcement agencies out there are looking forward to working with y'all, because all of those folks that stand on that thin blue line, all they want is to keep their communities safe. And of course, all their families want is for us to return those folks that stand on that thin blue line back home safely as well. So look, I appreciate it. This is a lot of talk. We've got a lot done today. So now we can order some breakfast. Huh? How about some waffles? We'll get Miracle out here and she'll take our order. And we do appreciate everyone from tuning in to Diner Days. And we hope to see you again soon. We'll be coming to a diner, maybe near you soon. Right now, we're in session. We'll try to get you some information on what's going on in Baton Rouge and make sure that you get the best buzz from around the state right here on Diner Days. All right, all of that talk, Madison. Whew, I'm hungry now. Miracle,
Yes, sir.
we want us some breakfast.
How we doing today?
I'm great. You know what I want, huh?
Yes, sir.
That
We gonna get
all-star.
eggs over medium, no toast, a little bit of grits, some bacon, and a pecan waffle for life.
That's right. Can't wait. What would you like to have?
I'll do the all-star breakfast as well.
How you like your eggs, my baby?
Over easy,
When you say over easy, you want the whites cooked or you want them runny?
runny,
Runny whites. Gotcha, baby. We doing hash browns or grits with that?
hash browns,
Hash
smothered
browns?
and covered.
Heard that. White toast okay?
Perfect.
All right, we're doing bacon, sausage, or ham.
Always bacon.
Bacon, regular waffles.
Yes, please.
You don't sure you don't want to try the strawberry?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
The classic waffle.
I
Classics.
got you, my love. I'll get this in for y'all, okay?
Thank you,
Would you like
Miracle.
anything to drink, my baby?
Just a water.
I got you.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're always going to end our podcast with a little bit of Lagniappe. And so this week's Lagniappe is Mother's Day. So a big shout out to my wife, Sharon, JT's mom. This is a big shout out, JT. You better find something for your mama this Sunday. And so a big shout out and happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers in Louisiana from your governor, Jeff Landry. Happy Mother's Day. All right, this is the latest buzz from the boot. This ends our Diner Date podcast. We had some great guests. Can't wait to see what's going to be next.